another good news story. This is something that's important, so listen up to this. It's important for Africa, which bears the greatest malaria burden. Kenya being among 3 African countries that has been identified by the World Health Organization for the world's first vaccine trial against malaria. The vaccine rollout to begin in 2018 will also be introduced in Ghana and Malawi. The RTS vaccine trains the immune system to attack the malaria parasite, which is spread by mosquito bites. The World Health Organization said the jab had the potential to save tens of thousands of lives. The vaccine needs to be given 4 times, once a month, for 3 months, and then a 4th dose 18 months later.
In 2015, 13 of the 15 countries accounting for 80% of the estimated global cases of malaria were in Africa. And similarly, 14 of the 15 countries where 78% of the estimated global malaria deaths occurred are in Africa. For the next 15 years, as we head to 2030, innovation and technical advances are likely to push progress towards ending malaria for good.
And I would like to take this early opportunity to extend an invitation to you all to join us, other Kenyans, in marking this important day. The theme for this year is End Malaria for Good. I'm sure many lay people in this country and across the world who have come across or experienced the disease will be identifying with that theme.
Big news for the continent, and that's why this is something that we're choosing to focus on here on Worldview. Let's talk more about this with Dr. Rudi Eggers, who's the representative, Kenya's representative for the World Health Organization. Thanks, Dr. Rudi, for joining us today.
Thank you, Yvonne.
So let's talk about this vaccine. I want to start off by asking why the 3 countries of Kenya, Malawi, and Ghana were chosen for this.
So thank you, Yvonne. Yes, the 3 countries were chosen because they were part of the 10 countries that were initially doing the trial for this vaccine, the pharmaceutical trial, and were the countries that had the better programs, the malaria control programs, because you wanted to put it into a situation that you could be sure that the program could take this additional burden of doing the vaccination. So the 3 countries, Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi, were chosen because they have this prerequisite.
All right, so let's talk about the vaccine itself. What stage is it at? Are we still at the trial phase? Is it at the final stages? Just explain to our viewers, what this whole process is about and hopefully the outcome of it. I'm sure everybody's hoping that this will be successful in the end.
So any vaccine or any medication goes through pharmaceutical trials, so-called clinical trials. Now, this vaccine has passed its 3rd trial, which means it is now ready to be tried in bigger groups of people. So it has also meant that the regulatory authorities, specifically the European Regulatory Authority, have found it sufficiently safe and sufficiently impactful to be able to use it. Because there are quite a number of changes that the program will have to undergo if you are introducing this vaccine, the World Health Organization thought it was best to actually take this into a further bigger trial. And this is what these trials are about. So previously we had just 4,000 children also vaccinated in each country. This will now be 120,000 children that will be vaccinated in this period.
Across the 3 countries?
No, in each country.
In each country, 120,000?
1,000 children, yes.
Okay. So what happens then after this 4th stage of the trials then? When do we look to have it properly tested and we now say, this works and it is an effective vaccine?
So we already know that it is effective. It's not 100% effective, but we already know that it's reasonably effective, about 40%. Basically, the 2 years, it will have a phase of 2 years where we will give it to the children and monitor how impactful it is and how safe it is. And then another 2 years to see the extended period of protection after that. So we expect by about 2022 to have a final opinion on this. So all this information from all the countries and the clinical trial information will be brought together at the World Health Organization make a final judgment at that point.
All right, and how are you choosing, is it only being tested on children, or are there, mothers, pregnant mothers? We know those are specifically vulnerable to malaria, but tell us about the selection process of those that will be a part of this testing.
So it in fact will be, yes, children. So the first dose is going to be given at 5 months of age. So it's actually infants up until the second year of their life. So the last dose is given at about two years of age. We will focus only on the children because that has to fit into the routine immunization program. So at the moment there's no trial of the pregnant women or anything of the like.
Okay, so it's just children.
Yes.
Let's talk about developing vaccines for a moment because, and correct me if I'm wrong, we understand this vaccine has been in the works or in development since 1984. What is that process like? I mean, I'm sure it's expensive in terms of resources, in terms of just bringing people together for this and seeing it's at the possibly final stage. But just how difficult is this process of developing a vaccine?
It is quite difficult. As you pointed out, it's about 30 years that we've been in this process, and it's actually one of the first vaccines that deal with parasites as opposed to viruses, etc. So it's actually quite a difficult new approach that we had to get this vaccine going. There were a couple of precursor vaccines that didn't work as well as we thought, so we had to go back, the manufacturer had to go back and retry new things. So it is quite a complicated, specifically for this vaccine, quite a complicated process.
There've been a number before this one.
Yes.
Okay, what's making this one more effective than the others?
Well, ultimately, you try out if the vaccine is impactful and safe. So those are the two aspects. And once you can show that it is impactful, that will allow it to then go further, like this one has now done.
Paint the picture for us as to why a vaccine for malaria is important. The burden of malaria on economies, on health, on output, on production. Like, what would success mean for this, say, in 2022, when the tests are out and we say, finally, we have a vaccine against malaria? Perhaps you can just paint for us, the effects of malaria on populations on the continent.
Okay, let's look at Kenya. So in Kenya, you've got about 12,000 deaths from malaria every year and about 6.25 million episodes of malaria. Now, if you introduce this vaccine, it's expected that your deaths will halve. So you go from 12,000 to 6,000, and your episodes will go down by 40%. So previously you had more than 6 million, now you will go below 4 million episodes. Now this means for the mother that has to take care of the child, she doesn't need to take the day off or not go for the harvest or anything like that, or the father or anybody that is involved in this process will have so much less to do with malaria. So the impact for the family in having not so many episodes is actually huge.
Yeah, and for the government, I imagine, because they're spending quite a bit of money into malaria. So tell us, once the vaccine is done, will there be need for medication? Is this one of those vaccines that you will be part of the immunization program of children once they're young and they get lifelong immunity? I mean, persons must be wondering that, good, now we're done with all of these malaria medicines once we get a vaccine.
Yes, now unfortunately we don't know that there is true lifelong immunity against this. So it is quite a new vaccine. So currently we think that the vaccine is about 40% impactful. So if you vaccinate 100 children, 40 of those children will actually be fully protected for 4 years.
Okay.
That's what we have at the moment. That's the perspective we have at the moment. One of the purposes of this trial is to see how long that immunity, that protection actually will remain.
Right.
It will probably not remain for life.
Okay.
So it's probably a immunity that will wane after a while.
Right.
So it doesn't mean we can stop the malaria program. In fact, it is seen very much as part of a comprehensive malaria program.
So it'll be complementary.
Exactly. You still need bed nets, you still need the indoor spraying, the treatment of pregnant mothers. You will still need all that, but this will bring down the episodes so much more.
Absolutely. This is some great news for the continent, and I think great news that Kenya was amongst those that were chosen. We thank you and we wish you all the best of luck. I know it seems like a long time for us to wait until 2022 or thereabouts, but definitely some great progress. We thank you very much for that, for your time. So we've been speaking to Dr. Rudi Eggers, who's the WHO Kenya representative on that malaria vaccine trial that should start in the country as well as Malawi and Ghana in 2018, and hopefully success a couple of years later. Thank you very much.